In an industry built on smoke and mirrors, where relevance is usually measured in months, one woman has built a kingdom that has lasted 2 decades. She didn't just survive the music industry, she dismantled it and rebuilt it in her own image. Taylor Swift. To call her a pop star is a drastic understatement. She is a global economic power, a literary force, and a future Hollywood director. Her life is a masterclass in strategy, a story of a girl who was told she was over in 2016, only to return and gross $2 billion on a single tour.
Taylor Swift's eventful 2016. ET has a list of all her major moments.
I'm just really excited.
From the Christmas tree farms of Pennsylvania to the Super Bowl suites of Las Vegas, Swift's journey is the ultimate American epic. She has faced the highs of winning Album of the Year 4 times.
The Grammy goes to Folklore, Taylor Swift!
A record no other human has achieved, and the lows of a public cancellation that forced her into hiding. She turned heartbreak into platinum records. She turned bullying into a stadium aesthetic. And when they sold her life's work out from under her, she didn't just complain, she re-recorded it, devaluing the originals and making history in the process. Today, we are going to deep dive into the full story of Taylor Swift. We will cover the specific tracks that broke the internet, the business moves that made her a billionaire, the truth behind the Snakegate scandal, and her historic reign in the 2020s. The story begins in a place that sounds like a lyric from one of her songs. Taylor Allison Swift was born on December 13, 1989, in West Reading, Pennsylvania. She grew up on Pine Ridge, an 11-acre Christmas tree farm. It wasn't the glamour of Hollywood, it was manual labor. Taylor's childhood job was picking praying mantis pods off the trees so they wouldn't hatch inside customers' living rooms. Her father, Scott, was a stockbroker for Merrill Lynch, and her mother, Andrea, was a marketing executive. This genetic cocktail, financial pragmatism mixed with marketing genius, would later become a secret weapon of Taylor's career. But as a child, she was defined by her intensity. She felt things deeply. At 12 years old, a local computer repairman taught her 4 chords on a guitar: G, D, E, and A. That afternoon, she didn't just practice, she wrote a song called Lucky You. While other kids were watching cartoons, Taylor was analyzing the structure of country songs. She realized that country music wasn't just about the voice, it was about the story. She begged her parents to take her to Nashville. At 11, she walked up and down Music Row with a demo CD of karaoke covers, knocking on doors. Every receptionist told her the same thing: go home, kid. She realized she needed to bring something new, so she focused on her specific teenage perspective. Her family took a massive gamble, relocating to Hendersonville, Tennessee when she was 14 years old, so Taylor could be near the industry. It was here, in a freshman math class, that the lightning struck. Taylor was dating a senior who was about to leave for college. Ignoring her teacher, she scribbled lyrics in the margins of her notebook. She wasn't writing about a truck or a bar, she was writing about that boy and that moment. In 15 minutes, she wrote Tim McGraw. That song caught the ear of Scott Borchetta, a DreamWorks executive who was about to launch a startup label called Big Machine Records. He had no furniture, no staff, and no office, but he believed in Taylor. She turned down a guaranteed development deal with RCA to sign with Borchetta's company that didn't even exist yet. It was the first of many high-stakes bets she would make on herself. Her self-titled debut album dropped in 2006. She was 16. She worked harder than veterans twice her age, visiting radio stations and baking cookies for program directors. The album was a slow burn success, staying on the Billboard 200 for 277 weeks. But it was her third single, Our Song, that made history. Taylor wrote it for her 9th grade talent show. When it hit #1 on the Hot Country Songs chart, she became the youngest person in history to single-handedly write and perform a #1 country song. Then came 2008, the Fearless era. This was the moment Taylor ceased to be a genre artist and became a global phenomenon. The lead single, Love Story, was a risk. It referenced Romeo and Juliet and featured a banjo, but it became the first country song to top the mainstream top 40 pop chart. It bridged the gap between Nashville and New York. Fearless didn't just sell, it dominated. It spent 11 weeks at #1 on the Billboard 200. It spawned 5 top 10 hits, including You Belong With Me, which became an anthem for every girl who felt invisible. In 2010, at just 20 years old, Taylor stood on stage at the Staples Center and won the Grammy for Album of the Year, becoming the youngest artist ever to do so at the time.
This is my first time walking up those stairs to accept a Grammy on national television. Thank you so much.
Now, we can't talk about her rise without talking about the moment that almost broke her. September 13th, 2009, the VMAs. Taylor was 19. When Kanye West stormed that stage and took her microphone, it did more than just interrupt a speech. It created a psychological scar. Taylor later revealed she thought the crowd's boos were directed at her. That moment planted a seed of insecurity, a desperate need to prove she was good enough that would drive her work for the next decade. Critics began to whisper that she was a product of her producers, so for her third album, Speak Now, in 2010, she made sure she had not a single co-writer for the album. She wrote every single track entirely by herself. The album sold over 1 million copies in its first week. It was a flex, a declaration that she was the true author of her success. In 2012, she released Red. This was her sonic pivot. She worked with gurus Max Martin and Shellback. The lead single, We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, became her first ever #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. But the crown jewel of Red wasn't a radio hit. It was a deep cut called All Too Well. Originally a 10-minute ad-lib session during rehearsals, it was cut down to 5 minutes for the album. Fans latched onto its raw, specific lyrics about a scarf and a road trip. It became a cult classic, widely considered one of the greatest songs ever written. We didn't know it then, but that song would save her career a decade later. By 2014, the media had put Taylor in a box. They called her a serial dater. They mocked her relationships. So she decided to change the narrative completely. She moved to New York, cut her hair, and released 1989. This was her first official pop album. It was a juggernaut. It opened with 1.287 million copies sold. The lead single, Shake It Off, debuted at #1. When her second single, Blank Space, hit #1, she became the first woman in history to succeed herself at the top spot. She knocked herself off the chart. 1989 won her a second Album of the Year Grammy, making her the first woman to win the award twice as a lead artist. She was on top of the world. But in the laws of physics and fame, what goes up must come down. 2016 brought the great cancellation. The feud with Kanye West reignited over his song Famous. Kim Kardashian released edited phone call footage that painted Taylor as a liar. The internet turned into a mob. The hashtag Taylor Swift is over party trended globally. I felt like my career was over, she said. I moved to a foreign country. I didn't leave a rental house for a year. She disappeared. No interviews, no paparazzi shots, just silence. But in the dark, she was writing. In 2017, she returned with Reputation. She didn't explain herself. She just released the music. The tour was a massive gamble, an all-stadium run that critics predicted would flop. Instead, it became the highest-grossing tour in US history at that time. She reclaimed the snake symbol, turning the bullying into power. Reputation sold 1.21 million copies in its first week, making her the only artist in history to have 4 consecutive albums sell over 1 million copies in their debut week. Just as she stabilized her image, she faced a business nightmare. In 2019, her old label was sold to Scooter Braun, a man she despised. This meant Braun owned the master recordings of her first 6 albums. Taylor was given a choice: earn her albums back one by releasing new ones, or walk away. She chose option C, burn it down. She announced she would re-record her entire back catalog.
It's been a big few months for Swifties like myself, fans of Taylor Swift, of course, and now more music is on the way, but it's not necessarily new music. That's because she's actually re-recording many of her first albums, and her version of Fearless, home to some of her first big hits.
Having reclaimed her reputation, Taylor stepped out of the darkness and into the daylight. In August 2019, she released Lover. The snakes transformed into butterflies, and the black and white aesthetic was replaced by a technicolor dreamscape of pastels. This album was pivotal, not just creatively, but legally. She had left Big Machine and signed a new global deal with Republic Records. The most important clause? She would own the master recordings of every album she made from this point forward. Lover was the first album that truly belonged to her. It was a love letter to love itself, featuring the political anthem You Need to Calm Down and the sleeper hit Cruel Summer, which would go on to dominate charts years later thanks to the Eras tour. It hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming her 10th #1 topping for 4 weeks. She was happy, stable, and finally free. But that freedom was about to be tested. The world shut down for the 2020 pandemic. Isolated and unable to tour, Taylor stripped away the pop production and picked up her pen. She released Folklore in July 2020 with 0 promotion. It broke the Guinness World Record for the most day-one streams of an album by a female artist on Spotify, 80.6 million. Less than 5 months later, she dropped its sister album, Evermore. These albums were critical darlings. Folklore won Album of the Year, making Taylor the first woman to win that award 3 times. She had successfully transitioned from pop star to respected musical poet. Then came the masterstroke, the re-recordings. When she released Red, Taylor's version, in 2021, she finally released the full 10-minute version of All Too Well. The song, which wasn't even a single originally, debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. At 10 minutes and 13 seconds, it holds the Guinness World Record for the longest song to ever reach #1. She proved that her fans didn't just want the hits, they wanted the lore. In October 2022, she released Midnights. If people thought she had peaked, this album proved them wrong. On October 31st, 2022, Taylor Swift became the first artist in history to occupy the entire top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100. 10 songs, all Taylor, no one else. The lead single Anti-Hero became her longest-running #1 hit. Midnights also broke the record for the most streamed album in a single day on Spotify, with 184.6 million streams, a record she would later break herself. This brings us to the event that defined the decade, the Eras Tour. Launching in March 2023, it was a beast, a 3.5-hour show covering 18 years of music. The demand was so high it broke Ticketmaster. In Seattle, the dancing fans generated seismic activity equivalent to a 2.3 magnitude earthquake. They called it the Swift Quake. The tour didn't just break records, it shattered them. It became the first tour in history to gross over $1 billion, and by the time it concluded in Vancouver on December 8, 2025, it had grossed a staggering $2.07 billion. Over 10 million people attended the shows across 5 continents. The economic impact was termed Swiftonomics. The tour boosted the GDP of entire countries. Because of this tour and the value of her catalog, Taylor Swift became a billionaire in October 2023, the first musician to reach that status solely based on songwriting and performing. And she didn't stop there. In April 2024, right in the middle of the tour, she released The Tortured Poets Department. This album was a commercial monster. It became the first album in Spotify history to surpass 300 million streams in a single day. In its first week, it sold 2.61 million equivalent album units in the US alone. Once again, she monopolized the Billboard Hot 100, but this time she took the top 14 spots. The lead single, Fortnite, featuring Post Malone, debuted at #1. It was a raw, chaotic look into a fleeting manic period of her life, proving that even at her biggest, she could still bleed on the page. While conquering the charts, she finally found a partner who wasn't afraid of her shadow. In 2023, she began dating NFL superstar Travis Kelce. It was a cultural collision. The trailer phenomenon dominated the news cycle. And in August 2025, the news that fans had manifested finally broke. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were engaged. The announcement post on Instagram shattered engagement records, pun intended, confirming that the lonely star had finally found her co-pilot. Now, as we sit here in December 2025 with the Eras Tour finishing same time a year ago, and with her latest album, Life of a Showgirl, still going strong, every single one of its 12 songs landed in the top 12 of the Billboard Hot 100, a feat no artist has ever achieved before. And with this latest sweep, Swift has now occupied the entire top 10 of the Hot 100 3 separate times. No other artist in history has done it even once. So, what do you think of the life of Taylor Swift? What does a woman who has conquered music do next? She conquers Hollywood. Taylor has her eyes to direct a project with Searchlight Pictures based on her own original screenplay. She has traded the stadium microphone for a megaphone, and if history is any indication, she's coming for the Oscars next. Taylor Swift's career is a testament to the power of owning your own story. She has generated over $4 billion in gross revenue from her tours and films. She has won 14 Grammys. She has changed the way artists are paid and how women are treated in the music industry. She was the teenager who was told no by every label in Nashville. She was the snake of 2016. She was the ghost of folklore. And today, she is the architect of the American music industry. And that was the extraordinary, calculated, and triumphant journey of Taylor Swift. From a small-town girl with a guitar case full of dreams to a global tycoon who rewrote the rules. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the era of Taylor Swift, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more iconic breakdowns, and drop a comment below which of her 12 albums is your personal favorite. Thanks for watching, we'll catch you in the next one.